Hi everyone, Julie here. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the steps I used to create Hung Out to Dry. Now this was several photos that I took in the backyard in the evening. I had my daughter wearing the pantaloons and I grabbed the bottom part of her legs and then we hung them up on the washing line. So what I'm doing here is I'm just grabbing the feet portion and attaching them to the pantaloons. I'm then going to go through and I'm going to extract everything I don't want by putting a layer mask on and then going through and painting it. So I'm just adjusting the colors, I'm trying to get the lights to match, everything like that. So a lot of this part's a little bit boring, so I might speed it up a little bit so that we can get through it all a little bit quicker, and I'll pop back in a second. So this was a fireplace that I found in an old abandoned house, and I'm using that as my backdrop, and what I'm doing is I'm just extending my shot. I didn't have images because I took this actual photo a little while ago. I didn't have images that I could use to expand my shot beyond the fireplace. So what I'm doing here is I'm just expanding it and making it fit. I'm not so worried that I've stretched the pixels on the side, because when you see the final image as I envision it in my head, it's going to be quite dark anyway. So I'm just going through and I'm just fixing that up and cropping it up. So I'm just going to speed things up a little bit. Okay, so I have made my background. I am doing a bit of a square here, and I've put my pantaloons in. I've also I adjusted the color contrast, and I'm just going through and doing some curves adjustments because the top of the pantaloons are lighter than the bottom. So I'm just going in using my lasso, feathering it. I'm just going to brighten the bottoms up a little bit and just mucking around with a few bits and pieces there. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm grab my lasso tool and I'm starting to create my main lighting in vignetting. So I used my lasso tool, feathered it, and going in to curves layer, I darkened the outside edges of the piece. And then I painted in some highlights, of which was just painted in with a white brush, and I put a layer mask on the top so that it's not covering the bits of timber, so it's coming in behind those bits of timber at the front there. So I've just gone into my light overlay pack, and I'm just looking to pull out a few bits and pieces that I used, including there's some overlay lights, some lens flares. I'm also looking to pull out a little bit of grunge and some wet plate that I'm hoping to put over the top of my image. And just by popping them on, I'm just closing off a few bits and pieces here because it was all too many tabs open. So what I did was grabbing like the grunge, putting it over to my layer. This would be like bits of debris that you would find, you know, dust motes and things like that in the air. So I position that where I want to, set it to screen, drop the opacity a little bit. Then I generally tend to position it where I want to and then go and do a little bit of a blur. Now I either do a Gaussian blur or I do a motion blur, depending on if I want it to go in a particular diagonal, like I would for rain or something like that, or if I just want it to be random, then I would keep it as a Gaussian blur. Same with the light here. I wanted to flip it over, so just transforming it and setting it where I want it to be. I will then set it to screen, and I'll put a layer mask on and brush out where I don't want it, just with some black paint, because I wouldn't want it on those timbers in the front. Those timbers in the front would actually be a bit darker because the light is streaming through the hole in the roof. So those timbers wouldn't be so bright as such. Then again, I'll go through making sure I'm on the image, not the mask, and go and put another Gaussian blur on that just to soften it up, because the light streaks are quite strong, and when I created them originally I wanted them like that, and it's really easy to go in and just blend them off as you need to. Same again, I've just come in here, I've just speeded it up a little bit with the light. Like this is a lens flare that I've created. Go in, set it to screen, drop the opacity, and just playing around with it, doing it that way. Still sped up a little bit, but I've come in here and I'm really starting to light and tone the image now. So coming through, doing various curves, I'm putting in a gradient map to really give it some toning to the image. I really wanted to keep sort of the old world feel to it, so I went for almost a sepia, but set that to soft light. I have then gone through and just playing with just readjusting some of the contrast layers and the hue saturation layers that I did. Just tidying things up and working up and down the layer stack. I frequently do, just to get things just as I want them. You think sometimes they're perfect when you did them at the time, but then you come back and they're not always exactly what you want. So starting to get it to where I want it to go now. I started back working on this image after a little break before I hit record, but I grabbed this other little red robin that I had from another image. I thought he'd look really cute on the washing line, so I'm just going to go around with the polygonal magnetic tool and just cut him out or extract him and put on the layer mask, and then I'm just going to go through and clean all that up. So I've just gone in and I've grabbed some various textures. These ones are actually book shading ones. So I've grabbed some smoke, which I put in, it's in the foreground. Sure, I could have put it in the background, but I have put it in the foreground at this particular point in time, and masked out where I want it. And a couple of grunge textures, which I put in over the top. And just set them to a blending mode, and played around with those. So I might just speed that up a touch. So I merged back down my layer stack and I went into Topaz Impressions, and I believe I did a little bit of a Jim DeSala thing on here. Now everything's running a bit slow, so I'm actually just going to stop and speed this up so that you're not sitting here looking at a blank screen. So once I had brought that back into Photoshop, I dropped the opacity because I only wanted just a touch of a painterly texture, not a lot at all. And then of course I put my grunge and my wet plate layer over the top and played around with those until I was happy with the final result. So that's pretty much the final image. I did brighten it up a little bit. I did a bit of a brightness contrast layer on the bird, and I dropped it down on the rest of the image. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.